So there is high-level corruption within our country.
You consider
among
corruption
the political class, among the elite.
You consider politicians who still as corrupt.
They are also corrupt.
While they see it as national cake. What's the difference?
There's a huge difference. You don't ascribe ownership to what does not belong to you.
Are they not Nigerians too?
You don't ascribe ownership. The Commonwealth belongs to the totality of all Nigerians.
Good morning and welcome to the Big Story on Daybreak Live. This segment where we go beyond headlines to uncover the forces shaping our society, our economy, and our future. Today, the attention shifts to a subject that continues to stir national conversation, influence public trust, and determine the pace of development across our nation. Our topic is the ripple effect, tracing the human and economic cost of corruption in the corridors of power. Corruption is often discussed in figures, reports, and statistics. But behind those numbers are real people, real communities, and real opportunities lost. From stalled infrastructure to weakened institutions and growing social inequality, the impact runs deeper than we often imagine. And to help us unpack this critical issue, we are joined by our guest, Ofino Ignatius, who will offer insight into how corruption at the top filters down to everyday life and what it truly costs a nation striving for progress. Now, very quickly, when corruption takes root in the corridors of power, its consequences rarely remain confined to the government offices or official documents. Instead, it creates a ripple effect that spreads across the economy, social structures, and the daily lives of citizens. Funds meant for healthcare, education, infrastructure, and job creation often vanish into private pockets, leaving behind under-equipped hospitals, overcrowded classrooms, poor roads, and growing sense of public frustration. And over the years, reports from anti-corruption agencies, civil society groups, and international organizations have repeatedly highlighted how financial leakages weaken national development. Economists argue that corruption discourages foreign investment, raises the cost of doing business, and slows economic growth. And lastly, social analysts, on the other hand, point to the erosion of trust in leadership and institutions, which can lead to voter apathy, youth disillusionment, and increased social tension. I have with me in the studio this morning, Ofino Ignatius. Good to have you in the studio.
Good morning, Samson. I'm delighted to be here this morning.
Right. Ofino Ignatius is a public affairs analyst and most definitely a good governance advocate. With him, we'll be making sense of this particular one. When we witness corruption at the highest level, what implication does it have for a country like Nigeria?
When you talk about the word corruption subjectively, what does corruption mean? Corruption means when you are taking what does not belong to you, when you ascribe ownership to what does not belong to you, when you steal what does not belong to you, you are being classified as being corrupt. So it boils down not just from the top, it also happens in the family too, when we are talking about corruption. But here now we are talking about what we call official corruption. Corruption has destroyed the economy of Nigeria. Resources are limited. Professor Lionel Robin defined economics as a social science which studies human behavior in relationship between ends and scarce means which have alternative uses. So when we are talking about scarce means, it means that resources are limited. But human wants are unlimited.
By your definition, by Lionel Robbins, we'll go on a quick break. And when we return, we'll go back to that very one, that very topic and the definition. We'll be back. All right, welcome back. That was a very quick break, and Ofino Ignatius is still here with me in the studio. You were saying something the other time.
Yes, according to Professor Leonard Robin, he defined economics as a social science which study the relationship, which studies human behavior in relationship to ends and scarce means which have what? Alternative uses. What he was trying to say is this: scarce means what? That resources is limited, but human want is what? Unlimited. So if you are going to utilize resources, resources must be utilized optimally, because resources can be transformed to different uses and alternatives. So that was what he was trying to say. So corruption itself is a monster that affects the growth and development of any nation. Let me give you an instance. When we are talking about fiscal policy of government, under the fiscal policy of government, or what we call budgeting, we have the recurrent expenditure and the capital expenditure. The capital expenditure is for the benefit of all. Let's assume 1 kilometer of road is costing 1 million naira. The government now decide to inflate that contract to 10 million naira. You know what has happened for the same 1 kilometer of road? That shows that the government has defrauded the people 9 million naira and also denied or deprived the people 9 kilometer additional road. I'm talking about capital expenditure now, over inflation of contract. How corruption kill. Then when it comes to the issue of recurrent expenditure, the issue of what? Ghost workers. When government is collecting salaries of non-existing workers in the ministries, departments, and agencies of government.
Is it safe to say corruption is as a result of a weak system and not bad people?
Corruption is as a result of the weak system we have in this country, because there is no consequence.
So the politicians are not bad people. It's the system that makes them corrupt.
Our politicians were
that so?
No, what I'm trying to explain is this: when you look at we have a weak system in this country. There is no consequence. You know, when Chief Olusegun Obasanjo decided to establish the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission (EFCC) and ICPC, it was a laudable development. But for now, how many persons have EFCC and ICPC able to prosecute according to the law? And there is one thing again in the issue of what is aiding corruption in this country. Should I tell you? The plea bargaining in law. That plea bargaining aids corruption. I stole 1 billion naira, but as a result of plea bargaining, I'm going to part away with 500 million. Then the remaining 500 million now, I will go away with it.
Is the plea bargain we currently practice in Nigeria same as what is being practiced in other places across the world?
I wouldn't know how they do it in other parts of the world, but the Nigerian own version of plea bargaining promotes corruption. Plea bargaining is a corrupt tendency.
Would Nigeria function?
So Nigerian law, you have to expurge it in the law.
Would Nigeria function if everyone follows the rules?
Let me give you an example. There is a school of thought, the Epicurean school of thought. He said, human beings have the tendency to steal, but why people don't steal is because of the consequence. Epicurean school of thought asserted that human beings have that instinct and tendency to steal, but why people don't steal is because of the consequence. Is there consequence here? When you go to advanced nations of the world, Western economy, every money that is being spent within the economy is being monitored. So there is high level corruption within our country.
You consider
among the political class, among the elite.
You consider politicians who steal as corrupt.
They are also corrupt.
While they see it as national cake. What's the difference?
There's a huge difference. You don't ascribe ownership to what does not belong to you.
Are they not Nigerians too?
You don't ascribe ownership. The Commonwealth belongs to the totality of all Nigerians. It belongs to each and every one of us all, not to certain few. So politicians in this country, they are corrupt because we have a weak system. Look at the Anti-Graft Commission. I remember in this country, there was what we call the oil windfall during Babangida's regime. At the end of the day, they set up a panel of inquiry. What happened? It became a media trial. $12 billion oil windfall during IBB's regime. That one apart. What about the issue of Abacha looting? That one aside. What about the issue of Halliburton scam?
Some said Abacha.
What about the issue of Dasuki Gate?
Some said Abacha did not steal.
What did he do?
According to insinuations, the last administration before this said he did not steal. That's what is out there.
A thief will always celebrate a thief. A thief will only celebrate a thief. A just man can never celebrate an unjust man. It's not possible. They are all the same. Even when they came to the issue of Muhammadu Buhari, they were celebrating him as a man of integrity. For 8 years that he ruled Nigeria, was there no high-level corruption during his own regime? There was still high-level corruption.
How about one individual being upright and then having so many people around him who are corrupt?
Is he not supposed to?
Does it make him corrupt too?
Yes! Let me give you an instance. When you are talking about public leadership, it's about service delivery to the people. For now, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu is the executive president of Nigeria. He's the grand commander-in-chief of the armed forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. It is assumed that he is the chief of army staff. It is assumed that he is the minister of defense. It is also assumed he is the inspector general of police. He is assumed as being the minister of finance and the coordinating minister of the economy. He is assumed to be the minister of health too.
But there are people who feel this roles.
But he now decided to appoint people in proxy that will act on his behalf. So if any of them is corrupt and the president choose not to prosecute them according to the law, that shows that silence becomes what? A consent. So that is the issue. You can't tell me that you are a man of integrity when your cabinet ministers are corrupt and you are silent about it. Silent in the midst of evil is evil itself. No. The conspiracy of silence in the midst of evil is evil itself.
Now, let's talk about the consequences of corruption in the nation.
Yes.
Right? Okay, if Nigerian hospitals receive huge budgets on a yearly basis, why do politicians still prefer to travel abroad? Now, is corruption about politicians alone or the Nigerian people too?
Nigeria have their own blame.
Is it an hydra-headed situation here?
It's a hydra-headed situation. So hydra-headed. You know, when we are talking about patriotism, the love for one's country. I want my country to be greater than America.
Ofino, are you patriotic?
I'm patriotic. That's why I'm doing this job. I speak truth to power at all costs. Do you know that the work I'm doing is so risky? I can be assassinated at any time. Look at this man, Martin Luther King Jr. Because he spoke truth to power, he was assassinated. Malcolm X, the Arab American, because he spoke truth to power, he was what? Eliminated. J.F. Kennedy, one of the greatest American presidents, also spoke truth to power. He was also assassinated. So I'm patriotic for speaking truth to power at all costs, not even minding the cost, that what is going to cost me. I'm going to speak truth to power till the last breath of my life. I'm doing my job as a patriotic citizen. But when you look at what is going on in Nigeria today, do we have a quality healthcare delivery system? No. Do we have a quality educational system? No. Do we have a
budgeted for all of it?
Yes.
So where does it go?
It goes to private pockets.
Is it just about politicians or the people?
The people also have the fault too. Look at what is presently going on in Iran. The people are revolting. That revolution is morally justified. They want a greater freedom. Anarchical ideology is there. America got its own independence through revolution. I'm not calling for revolution in Nigeria, but the people must try to ensure that they vote out bad government anytime the opportunity is there in general election. But Nigerians have become what we call gullible and complacent to issues that is going on. Now, our religious leaders are to blame too. They keep preaching about divine providence. instead of them to speak truth to power. The government is supposed to provide all basic amenities to the people.
Is there a difference between a civil servant that stole 50,000 naira and a politician that stole maybe 20 billion naira? Is there a difference?
There is no difference among them. A thief is a thief.
And
but
some will justify that a civil servant is being prosecuted while a politician is
the
being
one that
left alone.
stole 50 naira has the tendency to, if he has opportunity, to steal 50 billion. But the one that stole 50 billion has caused a multiplier damage to the economy. The other 20 billion naira was supposed to be used to transform the lives of millions of Nigerians. That 20 billion naira is enough for you to transform our educational system, to transform the healthcare delivery system, to create more roads, to build more roads and bridges for urbanization. But someone now decided to steal the money into private hands. At the end of the day, they now negotiate, go into what we call plea bargaining.
Now, talking about
the judiciary too, they also corrupt.
Now,
because if I read law, assuming I was reading law, my own thesis would have been, and advocacy must be, that part of the law that says that plea bargaining should be expunged. I know in the law school I may be expelled. In the Nigerian law school I may be expelled. Because I'm going to say, we say we are fighting corruption. And we are saying that the plea bargaining should be allowed. That if I stole 1 billion naira, I can return 500 million naira and go away with 500 million naira. That is what is aiding corruption. If you say in the West, plea bargaining is a principle in law, can we not expurge it from our own law system in Nigeria so that it becomes a model before the rest of the world?
Okay, let me ask you this. Now, let's go to the floor of the House. You are talking about the judiciary.
Yes, being corrupt.
Let's speak about the legislative arm of government. Now, is budget padding, right, a crime, or it is just a legislative discretion?
It's a crime. Budget padding is a crime. You don't ascribe ownership to what does not belong to you. They are stealing from the people because they know the people will not revolt against them. You know, the other time I made an illustrative example. Let's assume the cost of 1 kilometer of road is 1 million naira. The government now decide to award it for 10 million naira. The government have defrauded the people 9 million naira and also denied or deprived the people 9 kilometer additional road. And there is what we call duplication of contract in Nigeria. They keep awarding and re-awarding the same contract.
Every ministry's parastatals buy systems on a yearly basis.
Is it supposed to be?
Do systems expire?
Is it supposed to be?
I'm just asking you, do systems expire?
A bad system must be expunged. What a country and what a people and what a government.
Now let's talk about constituency projects that are rarely traceable to physical locations. At what point did you get it wrong when it comes to constituency projects for members of House of Assembly, House of Reps in Nigeria?
The members of House of Assembly does not have any business with capital projects.
Should constituency projects should it have been a thing for
the executive arm of government was supposed to be in charge of constituency. The executive arm of government should be in charge of what called execution of what? Public projects. What the legislative can do is what we call oversight functions. Yeah. But when Chief Olusegun came into power, you know the game of power. The game of power. He now decided, let us introduce what we call constituency projects. They now gave them what we call constituency allowance for that project so that the people can really know that they have a representative. But it was being abused. When you come up with a laudable idea in Nigeria, Nigeria abused it. There was nothing wrong. When Chief Olusegun mooted that idea, he developed that idea. Let there be a constituency project so that you that is a senator can have a constituency project within your senatorial district so that the people will have a belonging. They will not be part of what we call inclusive governance. The same thing happened to what we call a federal House of Representatives. The same thing also applied to state constituency, but it was being abused. Most of those money are being cornered privately. So now when they are now doing what we call, you know, most of our politicians, you know what they do? They say empowerment program. Empowerment program. You are not building industries. You are supposed to build industries, build business firms. Rather, what they choose to do is what we call empowerment program. They will now give it to their loyalists, party loyalists.
Generator.
Yes, party loyalists. That is corruption. What a country, what a government, and what a people.
Is there a lasting solution to defending corruption publicly in Nigeria? We have seen people do it. You are corrupt, and then there is a justification by that corrupt person about why he did what he did.
The reputation of the country is at stake. Is Nigeria as a country a model in Africa? You are corrupt and you are still boasting. You are corrupt. They gave you a traditional title. Our traditional institution is also at fault. How will you be giving traditional titles to people that are corrupt?
How about a politician that walks straight from prison to a political office?
If he was a freedom fighter, it is justified. But if it was a corrupt officer,
on corruption,
if the person was charged of corruption and came into power, what a country and what a people. It will never happen in a saner climb. You know, we have what we call political fugitives. You know, political fugitives, those who are fighting for political freedom, they can be incarcerated by the oppressive government. If those ones now, at the end of the day, they are now released from prison and they are now being elected as president or governor, that one is morally justified. But someone that is corrupt, at the end of the day, becoming our president, becoming our governor, becoming the local government chairman, it does not speak well about our own reputation as a country before the international community. So when we are talking about corruption in this country, corruption has destroyed Nigeria because there is no dire consequence. In China today, China is a communist country. What do they apply? They apply what we call capital punishment. The same thing apply to Saudi Arabia. They apply what we call capital punishment. Now some people are suggesting that there should be a capital punishment for those who are corrupt in Nigeria. The so-called politicians are raising objection. They said no. What they want is plea bargaining. So the judiciary has a role to play. An unjust judge cannot deliver a just judgment. No. I stand to be corrected.
Now, side by side with, let's put this side by side, Nigeria's poverty level as against record-breaking government budgets. Where do you see that going?
When you look at the poverty index in Nigeria, it's very high. The standard of living, low.
We keep increasing the figure when it comes to budgets.
High. The cost of living, high. So we have to be honest to ourselves. When you look at this poverty, it is being caused by bad governance. Resources will not be enough. But if you are a good manager of resources, you can be able to allocate the resources optimally. And I keep saying it over and over again, that you are a professor does not make you a good administrator. That you have a PhD does not make you a philosopher. Good leaders are born, they are not made. Philosophers are born. Look at Chief Obafemi Awolowo, the late sage. He was a philosopher. Our own version of Nostradamus, who saw the future. He was a socialist. He knew that the only way to allocate resources evenly to the people is for us to adopt socialism. He was a socialist. But when you look at the present president we are having now, he's a capitalist to the core. And greed is the basis of capitalism. When you look at Chief M.K. Abiola, he was a capitalist to the core. But he decided to adopt socialism. Because he felt that socialism plus welfareism, that is what Nigeria needs. You know, during his campaign, there was what called the Abiola milk. They produced milk and branded it Abiola milk. There was the Abiola rice, that MK Abiola rice. It was there. That was when Nigerians came out to vote for him massively.
Was that not
even though
at that time?
That time Nigeria did not see it as inducement.
Was that not corruption?
They knew that this man believed, though he was a capitalist to the core, but he feel that the only way he can be able to salvage the situation is for him to adopt the socialist ideal. So he was not even giving it to them. People were buying it at what? At a cheaper rate. So let us be honest to ourselves. Corruption is a deadly monster that does no economy any good. Look at the issue of religion. Do you know that Nigeria was supposed to be a zero corrupt economy because of the two religions? But here, most of the people who are corrupt in in Nigeria today, most of them, they either belong to Muslim religion or they belong to Christian religion.
Now, lastly, Ofino, before we go, is corruption failure of leadership in Nigeria or a deliberate business model for some politicians?
It's two-way answer. Deliberate model for some certain people to become rich because we have a weak system. Then the other one is just because of the failure of the country in having a strong institution. In America, every dollar spent within the economy is being monitored. Right from their central bank is there. Do you know that in Nigeria today we have what called unremitted revenue? There has been an issue between the Central Bank of Nigeria and NNPCL. That NNPC failed to remit certain revenue to the government treasury.
And it was written off.
Written off
By the president.
Was it supposed to be like that?
It's a topic for another day, Ofino. Thank you for joining us on the show.
Thank you for having me, Samson.
All right, we simply have to go. Thank you for being a part of the show so far. It has been a wonderful session in here. And that is where we'll put an end to the big story on Daybreak Live on Dominion Television today. And as we draw the curtain on today's edition of the big story, one truth stands clear. Corruption is not just a political issue. It is a human issue. Its impact is felt in quality of our schools, the safety of our roads, the strength of our economy, and the confidence citizens place in their leaders. The ripple effect we have discussed today reminds us that the fight against corruption is not the responsibility of institutions alone, but of an informed and engaged society that demands transparency and the accountability at every level of governance. Many thanks to Ofino Ignatius for sharing valuable insights on how and helping us to shed light on this critical national conversation. Samson Balogun is my name, and this has been The Big Story on Daybreak Live. Of course, link up with us on all socials, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at Dominion Broadcast. The show continues. Up next is Trend Watch. We'll be back.